Hi everyone, welcome to Earthtones. This week I welcome my great friend and fabulous drummer Dave Fox. In our conversation we talk about Dave's musical beginnings and how he coincidentally met his jazz mentor, the amazing Bob Gulloti from the band The Fringe, who we nicknamed the Charlie Banacos of Drums. We also talked about the responsibility of dedicating yourself to the music and what it was like for Dave to open up for American blues music icon and legend, guitarist Buddy Guy. We talk about the Metronome debate and how you can learn something from many different drummers, such as Steve Gadd, Taylor Hawkins, John Bonham, Stewart Copeland, and Neil Peart. It's the spirit behind the drummer that makes the music meaningful and impactful. We talk about Dave's recent work with bands The Gravel Project and AS3, and I even give Dave an on-air astrological reading. Find out what this Leo drummer has in his birth chart. Here's my conversation with Dave.
I actually did a podcast last night for a percussion one that I've been trying to do forever. And the timing just worked out. Last night, he and I, as a friend of mine from college, could do it. And then I know this has been rebooked because you feeling better, by the way? I know you were sick.
Yes, I am. Yes, thank you, Dave. I am feeling better.
So this is crazy. But the funny thing is, like last night, whatever format we were on, I know you don't need the video, but
Yes.
I had to use my readers the whole time. And then tonight, it's fine. Everything looks and sounds fine. So I don't know what's going on.
That is awesome. You know, I keep thinking I might make a compilation reel with like a little teeny clip of each of the videos since I have them.
Okay.
I would have to go through my downloads though.
Okay.
So, who knows when I'm ever going to do that. You know, I can only concentrate on one thing at a time.
Right. And
So
you're only taking audio from
I'm
this.
taking the audio, even though we're actually sitting here face to face.
Right.
It's all I can manage these days. You know what
I
it
hear.
is. You have a family.
I sure do.
I know you
You're telling-
totally. Oh my God.
Speaking of family, I'm afraid to ask, but is Dorian like a sophomore in high school? How old is he now?
You're close. He is a freshman this year.
Right, 'cause
And
Celeste is in 8th grade. She'll be going to high school next year. So
it's
both of these
crazy.
kids will be in high school. How did this happen?
It's
You know,
crazy.
I
It's
remember little
crazy.
Dorian, and I bet he's huge now. So
He is so huge, and
I can imagine.
he is huge, and in personality as well, as you can
Oh, yes.
imagine.
Yes.
My little Sagittarius, which you can relate to being a fire sign to Leo, which we're going to get to
Yes.
later. But let
Okay.
me back up a little bit.
Sure.
I am so incredibly happy to welcome to Earthtones today my friend and amazing drummer I've had the pleasure of working with. I am speaking with Dave Fox. Welcome, Dave Fox, to Earthtones.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So Dave is a touring drummer, an educator, and a staple of the New England music scene. He's also what I like to, well, I don't know if I invented this, but he carries the legacy of the Waltham sound, because I know you've you've studied with Bob Gulloti from the Fringe. For people who don't know who the amazing drummer that unfortunately we've lost, I know you studied with Bob, but we'll get to all that. So Dave,
Yes.
take us back to your beginnings, how you got into music and playing drums. What was your upbringing like? Is there other musicians in your family? Just give us a little background.
So my brother played the drums. Actually, I'm from a family of 5. I'm the youngest of 5. And we all played an instrument. We were all involved. My mother was really into us being involved in music. My brother I think we all tried sports. Like I remember trying Little League, and I remember doing track like in middle school. But I think it was clear that I was not set out to be good at team sports. So my mother signed me up, and this was, it's not that long ago, but it's long enough ago and it was from a big family, which is a little bit less common now, that kind of was like you had to pick a thing early on, and that was your thing. That was what was encouraged. So my brother was a drummer first.
Mm-hmm.
My two sisters played violin. My oldest sister, Marianne, was very into music. She still is. And so there was music around with the siblings. And then, long story short, because I feel like, well, maybe because I just told the story recently, but I feel like it always comes up. I
I,
started on violin, then
oh, you
cello.
did.
Yes. And then I didn't switch to the drums till going into high school. So about our kids' age now, or Celeste's age now. So because my parents thought when I came home and wanted to sign up for the drums, they were like, "Oh, you just want to do that because your brother plays the drums," which of course I did.
And it's
Um,
super cool instrument.
Absolutely, but
Yes.
they were very into the
As it,
fact, and I'm sure as a child, I probably was one of those kids that got into stuff, and you know how kids are, they get into it and then they're not into it. And then, so they were very intent on me being dedicated to something. So it was violin and then cello, which I liked to an extent. I liked the fact I was involved in music, but it wasn't the music I really, I really wanted to play rock music. I wanted to be in Kiss or Van Halen or, not really Rush. I didn't discover Rush or Led Zeppelin yet or the Police, but just I was playing cello and like really into those bands and like was like either wanted to play
yeah.
something like you couldn't play a violin or cello in those bands. I did enjoy though. I enjoyed the music part of it. So long story short, when I was going into high school, my mother signed me up. They needed people for the marching band, and they signed up all the the fine arts department would recommend kids. So I got recommended to join the marching band, and my mother signed me up without asking me
Hmm.
because she was like, you're going to do this."
You're going to
And
do something disciplined amongst
absolutely,
the drums.
yes, you're going to do something. You're not going to go into high school not doing anything, which we both know now how good that is because it's
Because
such a
they
tough.
overschedule them
Well,
now.
they overschedule, and it's a tough time when you're transitioning from middle school to high school because you're depending on what
Yeah.
you're like, it's an
You're trying
overwhelming
to
thing.
figure out what your thing is, whatever
Right.
that is.
And I think kids that are in sports and team sports have known all these other kids across the city for many years, so they have a connection and they're going into high
Right.
school affiliated with the team and a system. So it was really smart of my mother. So she signed me up. They sent me out to this band camp, and I got put in the percussion section. And as soon as I started playing, I absolutely loved it. And I came home and I was like, I want to play the drums now. And then my parents were like, it was great because they were like, okay, awesome, we'll sign you up for lessons. Are you going to? I'm like, I'm going to
Be
commit to
committed.
this.
Yeah.
And so they signed me up, and I got my brother's old kit, so I would play that every day after school. And I played the marching band, and I
Super
still
cool.
did the orchestra. I did the string orchestra for 2 years in high school, and then by sophomore year, I had taken drum lessons. I was had now in the
Who
marching
did you
band.
study with? Who
I
was like
studied
your
with the Yeah, I studied with a teacher called Walter Tokarzik, who was a very influential Waltham teacher. He taught in the public schools for years and years. He taught my
Mm.
brother,
Oh,
so I think he took me on because he taught my brother. Very disciplined, old school teacher, very, which was huge. And
yeah.
he his big claim to fame is the drummer Mike Mangini, who's also from
Sure.
Waltham. Okay,
Oh, I didn't know
Walter
that though. Yeah.
Walter was his teacher growing up. So like
Oh,
this is and even back then this was like Mike was a local star. He wasn't world famous, extreme
wow.
prog phenomenon. So it was, Mr. Tokarzik would always be like, Mike Mangini, and he had a few other
Yeah.
guys, and he would always drop these. So there was a legacy with studying with him, and he was a great he was Allison. He was an amazing teacher because he actually I know he taught me a lot about the drums and he really encouraged me,
Yeah.
but like he took me during some of those formative years in high school, and I don't know if you could even do this nowadays, but I remember private lessons with him. We
Mm-hmm.
did no playing, and he would lecture me on trends in behavior he was seeing that was
Wow.
not becoming of the way you want to act. Like,
Right.
because I was a
Right.
teenage kid doing dumb stuff, what teenage boys do, and hanging out with other knuckleheads. And he would pull me in practice room. I'd be like, "Oh, I'm here for
Yes.
my lesson." He's like, "Great, sit
And he
down."
wanted to talk.
Oh no, he talked at me. There was
He
no
talked.
and he's like, "Hey, so I heard this happened, and I heard that happened." And he's like, "And let me tell you something." And like it was a half hour of that, and I was like, "Wow!" But
That's so
those are
interesting because I see cats doing that today, like high level cats, like on other instruments, like that how that's an important part of it actually is to make time for the talking at, or at least two. Like giving some philosophies. Of course, you're going to do the rudiments and the paradiddles, and
hmm
there's a lot of academics to it. But what you're saying is that, like, you remember a lot of the lesson being dialogue, or at least
Yeah,
lecture. Yeah.
and what it did, which was great, because it paved the way for like my next two teachers and Bob, especially on a different level, musically and art
Oh yeah.
wise. But it paved the way that like this was a big deal. This is this is a great responsibility if you're going to be a musician and you're going to study music, or just it goes hand in hand with working on being a good human as well. So that was
Absolutely.
I am forever grateful for that,
I love
because
that.
yeah, he was, and I think about him a lot when I teach, and I think about all my teachers actually. And
Same.
right, they all come back. It's like the way your parents come back when you parent.
It's so true. It's like look at this blueprint that's there that you can draw from, and it's a living thing. That's true. Those lessons, I definitely remember, the way I was taught, some of my bass teachers, and I find myself doing the same thing. And that's super cool. And that makes sense, because I definitely see that in your teaching also, the importance of kind of, you know, remembering the history of your instrument and the traditions and the other people who've paved the path, and also to have this respect for what you're doing, because with great fun comes great responsibility, right?
Responsibility.
It's so
Absolutely. It
true, because it's
is. It
so
is.
easy to get, we know in music, so many people can get sidetracked from all kinds of things. And
And
yeah.
no, you can. And the thing I think you're learning is that talent and there's talent and there's ability, and then there's how you are as a person, and sometimes like it doesn't meet where you think it does, and you have to do what's right for you. So like, and that was like like back to Mr. Tokarczuk, Walter Tokarczuk.
Yes.
That was his big lesson, was like, you know, that for me, he was always like putting it back to like, you're thinking it's okay to act a certain way because of the people you're running with, and you're getting good at what you're doing, so you're trending in a way that's not who you are as a person,
Right.
and
You're
and
practicing. Yeah.
but well, and he meant that like, you can't start acting like a jerk because you're getting good at something. um
Right.
and these things kind of happen, or you become, just because you're good at something. And that's actually what was happening. Like I was, getting decent at something along with other people, so
Yeah.
we were being, we were being kind of rude, and thinking that things didn't pertain to us, like,
Right.
hey, everybody needs to do this, everyone in the ensemble needs to be here at a certain time, or this and that. And we were like, we can do what we want because they need us, and like really
That's right.
dumb teenage stuff.
And it's a
But
lot of sitting around for the drummer a lot of the time,
yeah, yeah,
waiting.
so
You have
goofing
to
off,
learn. You
and
have to learn how to be
yeah,
patient
and like, just doing,
while everyone
so
tunes for an hour and a half.
right. And so you start,
It's
right, so you
start
start doing
tapping on shit.
tapping or throwing pencils, or
The
like,
right.
yeah, that's the mild side of it. But like,
It's
but
so true.
long story short, like it didn't take much. Like I really snapped to it, and respected where he was coming from, and yeah, it was really great. So
And he was a perfect segue to, at least at some point, or maybe your next teacher, Bob Gulloti. Were you
Well,
a teenager or?
before I met Bob around
Yeah.
that time when I was a teenager, and he was super cool, and he was just this cool dude, and I met him because a kid I knew in the band, who I played in a band, like a band outside of the music department, like we had a band, and
Right.
we rehearsed at his house, and Bob was like his neighbor. So
Oh,
Bob came over to help us make a 4-track recording. And
nice.
right, he came in. This is how cool he was. And I was scared to death because the legend of Bob Gulloti came in, and so this was like early 90s, maybe late 80s, early 90s, and he came down and total Bob, like smoking a cigarette. Wait, what's happening, man? What are you cats doing? And
Yeah.
I was just like, oh man. And what he did is he hung out and he helped us make this 4-track. Do you remember? I don't
Oh,
know.
like on a
The 4
Fostex,
Exactly. I was gonna say
oh,
Tascam, but remember you would do
yeah.
that with your band and you would try and bounce it and it would all like,
Yeah.
but he was helping us. He was like, all right, because we had horns, and he was helping us in this like really positive and constructive way. Like he didn't come in and be like, hey man, I just played over in Europe with the Fringe. I
Right.
don't know what you kids are thinking. And if he had done that, like that
Exactly.
would have been warranted too. But
Right. But he
but he
wasn't
was
like that.
he, I'll never
And he's a
forget.
jazz guy.
And so the funny thing is, like, I had to start one of the songs with like a drum fill, and I was like, I remember I went and I missed it or I couldn't do it just because I was like, and he was like, came over to me and he was like, hey man, you sound great. He's like, don't, man, just
That's so
just
cool.
relax and start it. And I played great afterwards, and he gave me a couple of really big picture constructive comments. And so then afterwards, he's like, hey, he goes, we ought to listen to this on like a real system. So he
Mm.
brought us all to his, which I ended up spending years in later, where he taught his system, and he played it like on his stereo. And then he was showing us all his, jazz records, and he was showing me like, he was so cool. But you know what he said to me that day? I'll never forget it. Like, he's like, so what's your story, man? You're like 16, you thinking of going to Berkeley? And I said, no, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, I just know I swear to God, I said this. It sounds so cheesy, but I was like, I know I was like,
I just like playing.
yes, exactly. I was like,
Yeah.
I just like playing
And
the
you're still like
drums,
that. Yeah.
sir. And he was like, I go, I just really would love to play the drums someday for a living. And he was like, you will. And I remember he had like the cigarette. He's like, yeah, man, you will, and then, so
Super
years
cool.
later, like after college, I was gone to college and studied there and did like the marching band and the drum corps thing. And that was my second teacher, Tom Hammett, in the
Mm.
program there, which was also hugely influential, which kind of Walter had set me up for. But that was a whole nother thing.
Mm.
It's something I got really into. And then I got out of college, moved back down here, was playing in some bands, and I was working a day job. And then I went to it wasn't the Lily Pad. It was before the Lily Pad. So it was either the Lizard Lounge. I don't think it was the Willow. I know I got into a thing of going to see the Fringe, like a lot of people did. So it probably was
Right.
and I know a couple times was the Lizard Lounge. And people were like,
Mm.
you got to come see the Fringe. And I was like, right. And at this time too, I was kind of like wanted, like could play, but I was like, there is real holes missing in what I hear and what I want to play. And I when you're like, I need
Yeah. I
something,
need
and I
something.
and
And
I went and
yeah.
saw the Fringe, and I instantly was like, I have to study with Bob.
Mm.
I was like, this is what I've been looking for. I went the Fringe, and my jaw was on the floor, and I remember thinking like, oh my God, idiot, you met this guy like years ago, and
Right.
and you didn't realize how deep this was. And
Right.
so I went up and I talked to him on the break, and he was like, yeah, man, I remember you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I said, I need to start studying with you. And he's like, I got one slot. He's like, call me at 11
It's
a.m. tomorrow. And I did. I called him. And then he was like, yep, Monday, 6 o'clock. And that was my time for years. I felt
six
like
o'clock at night.
6 at night on a Monday.
All right. That's a good time.
That was my spot with him. And I felt like I had that all during my 20s, like years. And then even like it was heavy the first few years. I did it every week for a very long time. And the first year with Bob, it was so intense. I would practice. I mean, I was in a band and I worked, but
Hmm.
I got out of the job I had like at 4, and we had a practice space over in the South End, and I could walk to it because I worked in Boston. And I would play. I felt like I would play from like 5 till whenever, and
Right. Into the night.
and those are yeah, and those are
Yeah.
and those like everyone has a
Yeah.
couple of time in
Couple
their
of
life
years like
where
that
you the most
intense.
intense practice
Yes,
because
yes.
he and I would practice all week. I think the band would rehearse like a couple times. And I would take Monday. Monday would be the only day I wouldn't practice because that would be my lesson. I would build
Hmm.
up to this lesson, and that
Yeah.
would like, be the thing. And
That's
but
a good schedule.
it was heavy though. It was heavy with him, and he understood that I wanted it to be heavy, and he was really it was intense. It was intensely heavy. It was a lot of work,
Oh
and
yeah. I
and
bet. It reminds me a little bit of, studying with Charlie Banacos. It's
I've
like,
always
yeah.
said that when people talk about that, I really think that
Mhm.
Bob was the Charlie Banacos of the drums.
Yeah.
I really think so because he had a full blown master concept, right? And everybody went through the same stuff, and
Right. The same system.
and everybody has like kind of the same experience, but also at the same time, all of his whole system developed everybody to seek their own path. Like the biggest thing I realized,
That's
actually,
right.
the biggest thing I realized when Bob passed, although he did tell it to me a year or two earlier, I had a great conversation with him. And we were talking actually about how many drummers in town had studied with him. And I was, and a lot of these guys are close friends of mine now,
Hmm.
like, a community of us. And I said,
It's
yeah, there's this guy and this guy, and this guy's playing with X. And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, because I'm proud of all you guys. And he goes,
I
he
love
goes, hey
that.
man, the thing I'm the most proud of? He's like, none of you cats sound alike. Not a
Mm.
one. He goes, you all sound different. And
Yeah.
he was really proud of that because I think all of us who studied with him wanted, like, our goal was to sound like him for a short period of time. Like, we all wanted to be him,
Right.
whether we knew it or not. But I bet if
Hmm.
you ask anybody, say, there was a period you definitely wanted to sound like
Yeah.
Bob,
But
you
you
know?
developed your own sound despite that, which was his
R-
goal probably, was
Right.
not only
And I
to
think,
impart this
like,
knowledge, but for you to take it and make it your own.
right, and it took me a long time to be okay. Like he was telling me that for years, and kind of always I didn't hear it for a while,
Hmm.
because I was hell bent on doing such a good job with what he was and like I
Right.
would always think it was like a little bit of a slight. He would be like I would be working really hard at the jazz stuff and really hard at the free stuff, which I love. But
Yes.
he would be like, man, you're a really good. He would be like, you're a really good funk player, man. He's like, you're really good with that Tower of Power stuff. And I would be like, kind of a little bummed because I would be like, man, that's the stuff I knew before I went
Right.
to you.
Right.
And he would always bring it back up. And he would always bring up, he's like, oh man, you're great with the marching band stuff.
But it sounded also like you had a passion to kind of explore jazz too, I
Oh no,
think.
I did,
Yeah.
and
And then
and
maybe that's what it was, and he
well,
kind of
and
appeared, this
that's
teacher.
exactly right. And
Yeah.
I wanted to. I was so into jazz, but like I hadn't been through the proper like mentorship and training and study. Like, you
Yeah. It's a
know,
different thing.
I really hadn't like because I didn't go to music school for jazz. Or I
Hmm.
didn't even. I mean, I when I went to UMass, I got another degree and did the marching stuff. So
Yep.
when I came out of UMass, like Bob then became my grad school, and like I felt like I did like two degrees worth of work with him because it was so long,
It
and it was
takes
so
all week just to finish whatever, and
right, and I
then
did it,
some to get it done.
and it was a true thing, and I'll never forget like the day he was finally like, you actually swing now, and it was. I remember the first time because
That's
he's like,
nice.
man, it's really starting to happen, and then he was just like, it's still terrible, but it's happening, like that.
Ah, I love that. That's
It was
funny.
great.
So Dave, you play like all the time. I've seen you play with so many people. I was just like writing down names of trying to think of people I've seen you play with. Um, Gracie Curran
Yep.
and Lydia Warren,
Yep.
and I love Stan Strickland, the
I
saxophone.
just played with
Oh my
Sam
God.
Friday night.
Oh, really? He's
I
awesome.
haven't seen Gracie and Lydia in a couple of years because they both live in Memphis now. And
Understandably.
Yep.
Blues artists,
Gracie's
blues
Gracie
singers.
is up and around. Gracie and I love Gracie, and she was really good too. And Lydia too. I met. It's so funny how you can
They're
trace all
so
this stuff. So I
talented.
met Gracie through Lydia. I met Lydia through Chris Ravelli.
All of these different people you've played with has led you to some touring, and I know you've done a bunch of touring with Tom Hambridge
Yep.
that led you to open for Buddy Guy. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. So with Tom, our I've been so Tom. So for people that don't know, Tom Hambridge he's actually a drummer, and he was around this area for a very long time,
Hmm.
and he was very successful. He actually started with Susan Tedeschi. He helped her kind of career. He's also a producer and a songwriter, which is what he's more famous for. Um, he lives in Nashville, not Memphis,
Okay.
and he's always been. He had a band around here in the '80s called TH and the Wreckage,
Hmm.
and then it became Tom Hammett and the Rattlesnakes in the '90s. And our good friend Sven Larson was playing bass for him. So
Nice.
Tom was looking. So what Tom was do? Tom's a drummer, but when he does his band, he fronts the band, and sings, and then he'll
Cool.
play a little bit of drums. But he needs another drummer. So
Oh,
that's a
wow. I didn't
big.
know that he was a drummer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's
So
a
he
great
knows what
drummer.
you're doing back there.
Oh yes, he does.
Yeah.
So Sven got me on this gig about 2009. And so I've been working on and off with Tom, and I only say on and off because Tom is so busy, he doesn't do the Rattlesnakes as much. He's actually Buddy Guy's full-time drummer right now.
Oh,
He's Buddy
wow.
Guy's producer and Buddy's drummer, and he's touring with them right now. But with
Amazing.
Tom, we have done some amazing shows opening up. We did a stint with George Thorogood about 10, how long is
That's
2009 and
right. I
10?
remember.
Yeah, we did a
Wow.
bunch of shows with them.
From a bad to the bone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We did a few dates with Leonard Skinner. And then the big Tom with Tom, I did these things called these legendary rhythm and blues cruises, which are
Yeah.
incredible because one,
Oh
they're in
my
the
God.
Caribbean. So I've been in the Caribbean
Right.
like all over the Caribbean like 5 times with Tom. And I've been to Europe with Tom. I've been
Wow.
to Switzerland, and I've been to Vancouver. These
Super
really
cool.
cool opportunities have come up. A week here, a fly out here. And he's super. I mean, he's an incredible human. He's super good to me. We've great relationship. Great relationship, I think, with anyone he works with. And I've had the opportunity to play with so many. The guys in his band alone
Oh,
was an
yeah.
amazing opportunity to play with. And then
But it goes back to what your teachers were saying too, how it's so important to be a good person, like, as a band leader or in the band, like
right.
you got to be, it takes more than good chops to get these gigs too. You got to be like easy to work with or change on the fly or, just kind of be open to correction or whatever it is,
Absolutely.
right?
And
All
Tom
those
is
other things.
he's coming from a different place, right? But he is as disciplined and serious about his music as everyone else we've talked to. So again, there was a bit of a learning, and I was the
What was
younger,
expected of you.
absolutely, like a standard of, and that was a learning experience because stylistically, when I first started playing Tom, I was coming heavy from what we just spoke about, jazz and playing
Yeah.
free music and some other stuff. And at first, I was kind of like, all right, this is this stuff. I got this. And it really was made very clear to me quickly, like, this music deserves 100% of your focus, just as like that does. And that was an amazing lesson to be reminded of. And I think that really,
Go back to the roots,
well, and,
that's
yeah,
where
and
it
just,
comes from.
it really was great. And great that I was able to learn that lesson and grow into it at the same time. Like, be with these guys who were heavy in what they did and gave me a chance to be like, oh yeah, you got to bust your butt at this stuff too.
Right.
So with Tom, we on a few of those cruises, we opened for people like Buddy Guy and Bobby Rush, and then Buddy had sat in with us before. Buddy came and joined us for a song on stage, which was amazing. And then we went out right before the pandemic. We went to Buddy's club in Chicago, Legends, and we
Hmm.
played. And then Buddy played, and that was just an amazing night. and then we get to hang with Buddy Guy, and
And he's in his 80s now. How long ago
yeah,
was that? That was
that was
in
2020, so that was two
Yeah.
years ago,
Wow.
and right before. I mean, this was one of my last gigs
Before
before
COVID.
COVID, and it was great. And I mean, he is not just a living legend of music; he's an American icon.
Wow.
Buddy Guy, for those who don't know, is one of the last
Chicago
real
blues.
generation of Chicago blues. He's
Yeah.
one of the last ones. And his
Yeah.
story is amazing. So there's a couple of great documentaries out there about him, and his book is amazing. He's the son of sharecroppers. I mean, so think
Wow.
about that. And
Amazing.
he is, without him, there is no Rolling Stones. There is, Hendrix got a
Eric
lot from him.
Clapton.
Eric Clapton, absolutely. All of that British, blues.
British Invasion or the
Yeah,
British Blues. Yeah, it's so
and they
true.
and they all hold him in such high regard. So like it's really it's again one of those cases where we have this American cultural icon,
Oh,
you know, and
we're so
and
lucky to be in
but the
this
rest,
lifetime with Buddy Guy, to be
absolutely,
living and being musicians at the same time as him. I remember seeing some video of his performance that you were on a gig, I think, doing the blues tour. And I was just like, oh my God, Fox is like chilling out. And there's Buddy Guy, like amazing, like what a gig.
yeah.
That must have been tremendous to meet him.
So that was Tom's gig, and Buddy came up and did a song with
Did
us.
a song with you guys.
Yeah, it was great,
I was
and
like,
he's a
damn.
giving person. He does that for a lot of
Oh, he
people.
seemed like he loved it, like just as
Yeah,
much as he always did. You
and he
know what
does
I
that at his
mean?
club. Like, when people open up for him, he'll come out, and he's
That's super cool.
yeah, very cool.
So, Dave, so let's talk a little bit about. So you're also a really active educator on drums, and I am so fortunate that you were my son's drum teacher for I think 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
And
I
yeah, can you
can't believe it was
believe it was
that.
that
No, I
long? Oh
can't.
my God, so many members. Well, it's the process as a parent,
Yes.
that just the day in and out,
Yeah.
whatever we
Wow. I
pack to
know. I
bring,
know.
or just watching the whole journey is so wonderful. But there's all different things out there. But what do you think of this? I'm sure heard some famous, very famous, talented musicians talk about this, the idea of the metronome versus no metronome. Like the importance of good time is so important. And
Absolutely.
and
No, I firmly believe in a metronome.
same.
Firmly.
Yeah. I
Um,
love it. It's like fun.
it is fun, and I think it's essential for your playing. I think,
Yeah.
and I've actually, the older I've gotten and the more experienced I've gotten, the
Hmm.
more into using it.
Yeah.
And there are some gigs where it does not call for it. And I understand what you're saying. I understand, like, there's people saying if you're always relying on a metronome, you're not building up your inner clock. Like, it's kind of like you're using training wheels. And I don't buy that. I think that the metronome will lead you to strengthen your inner clock.
That's right.
So
And you need
here's a great,
check-ins because I don't think we're perfect. Like even when you think you've got it, it's like, wait a minute, what happened? I had coffee
no,
today or whatever.
exactly. And you
Yeah.
have tendencies. And I don't think there's anything
Oh yeah.
wrong with that. So
That's right.
if adrenaline takes over at a bigger show, or but
Yep.
two clicks or counting off the wrong tempo
Mm.
is the difference between whatever you're trying to do being good and great, and
Absolutely.
I understand that there's some things you're into where it doesn't allow for it, and it is what it is. You go out and you play a live show, and it's one tune, it bang 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 bang, high energy, or someone else is in charge, and that's fine.
Right.
But I
It's
know
like a
for me,
collective.
what I've really gotten into, especially with Gravel Project, this band, my
Yeah.
band, um, is we're really serious about tempo, like, and it to the point, like, I mean, we have a set list and we have
The
the
metronome
tempos,
markings.
we have the
Nice.
metronome, we all know them, and then I spot check them pretty regularly throughout the show, or when we're playing every
Yeah.
gig. We
That's
got in a
super
habit of
cool.
doing that, and we almost got into the fun of it. We almost got into
I
the
love that.
fun, and then, like, because at first, it almost seemed like we were being too anal about it and being like, we heard something back. We heard a gig back and we're like, wow, that is jacked up. Like, why is that so fast? And
Right.
then we would check it and it's like, wow, that's like 8 clicks faster than what it should
Right.
be. And it's,
Oh, that's a
and
super cool. That's a super cool thing that more people should be more disciplined about
well, and
that.
here's kind of what happened is, so I went to see Steve Gadd at Scullers a few years back. Um, and I can't remember if this was before or after I started doing this. And I didn't always do this, by the way. Like, I was always confident my time was good. And then you start to um, have some experiences where things don't go the way you want or the gigs aren't the way you want. So just like anything, you can go through a period, you're like, maybe it's not as good as I thought, or what's happening.
Sure.
And then so I just was like, at one point I was like, forget it. I'm gonna leave no stone unturned. I'm gonna be working, with it all the time. I'm gonna give into it. And we
Yeah,
I went some
I agree. I agree. I remember having a bass teacher. They had us catalog like 50 or 60 songs, what the, metronome markings were, just to
right.
bring your awareness to it, because it really does make a difference, like what the speed is, a couple of clicks, or
Yeah,
how you want to put it over, you know?
right. And when you're aware of what you do, like I know when I used to play a lot of weddings, I used to like hate metronome markings because it was so
Yeah.
stressful because you're trying to go from one song to another. And
Right. They don't want you to stop.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
got like really weird about it, but
Mm.
I thankfully like was able to then embrace it again and I really enjoy it. And it's never a bad thing if someone's like, "Hey, it's
Yeah.
too fast." I don't take it as a personal assault. I'm
Right.
just like, "Yeah, it's too fast." Like, well, like what should it be? You
Right,
know?
right.
So
Do
back
you even know what you want it to
right.
be, you
And
know?
that's okay. Like check it out. And then even if you're like, "Hey, I know it's supposed to be 118, but I kind of want to go out and just play, let's let the music go where it goes."
Yeah,
Great. You've made that
it's good to
choice
do
at least
both.
exactly. So I went and saw Steve Gadd and I had front row seats. This was at Scullers with his band. And he between every song, he's is killing, by the way. It's everything you'd think it would be Steve Gadd,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And he's kind of a quirky dude, and between each song, I notice he's like putting in an earbud, like I got him right now. Like he's like putting it in, and he's like wincing, and he's doing something. And like after the second time he did, I figured out what he's doing. He's got like a metronome right next to, on his little stand next to the hi-hat, and he's
Wow.
checking the tempo.
Yeah.
And he's not being subtle about it after a while. He's like really checking it and waiting before he counts in.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I said, man, wow, Steve Gadd, the greatest time in the world. I didn't think he would do,
He's
and then
so open with it.
right, and then I was like, of course. Like,
Right.
of course,
Of
that's
course
why
he would.
he's Steve Gadd.
Yeah, exactly.
And I loved it.
Wow.
It really inspired me, and I was like, right, if that's good enough for Steve Gadd, you better believe that's good enough for you. So
Absolutely. It's
you
good
better
to see,
start doing that.
that's so important that he did like show that side of him, because there are other drum professionals like yourself there watching him, realizing, of course, he's checking the metronome markings because he's a human being, you know?
And he's the type of guy that if you were to ask him, he probably would be like, "Yeah, man, I got to get this right for everybody."
That's
Like
right.
this
Because
is a whole room.
it's that responsibility thing
Yeah, he's like,
again.
"There's a whole room of drummers here, man. I got to get," like that's what he would say, and he's right on. So it was so cool, you know.
And also, as educators, it's important to pay homage to the people who came, before us. And I wrote down a couple of drummers. Well, for one, from you mentioned Rush earlier, Neil Peart. I know you've
Sure.
always been a huge fan, and just the legacy that he has left for drummers is just unbelievable. And there's something in it for everybody. I think they're like, I remember you trying to show Dorian some like Rush stuff like way before you could handle it, just because he wanted to. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah, I think I was showing you right because he came in and he was like,
Yeah.
"I want to learn this," and I
Right.
was like, "All right, well, let's at least put it on." I think
Exactly.
so.
So
The Rush thing
anyway.
is very interesting, and I'm sure there's thousands of people who will say the same thing, and I try actually not to talk about it like a lot because I find that like it's not everybody's cup of tea, and then I find too that some people, if you talk about your influences a lot, some people start to think that that's what you're going to try and do, or they try and make an assumption on the way you actually play based on that. So like if like some people like won't want to hear that. So because they're
Right.
afraid that like I'm going to come on a gig and play a million fills and
Right.
bring this humongous drum kit. And I think more than anything, that's not really what inspires me about Neil. Neil was a very personal thing because it was when I first started playing drums. And I'm sure that a lot of the people who like him, it's the same reason. And
Mm.
I've thought about this a lot because, obviously he passed, so he's not
Yeah.
around anymore. So
Yeah.
once someone passes, you're looking at exactly what you said. You're looking at a legacy, not a living thing anymore that
Right.
creates. So, on the one hand, it's kind of sad, and on the other hand, it's like you that's what you have of them left.
Right.
So, and you kind of wish you appreciated it more when they were here that they could actually do it, but you have it. So, and for me, just like some of those albums are real personal because they're a real imprint in me musically and life changing
During a
when I
period
was
of
stuck,
your
of
life.
course. And I
Yeah.
could not play any of it. And
Yeah.
honestly, I probably didn't understand a lot of it more than the spirit of it. And more importantly, what was great about it is the music to me, I knew even before I knew how to play a lot of it, it required a lot of skill and discipline and creativity
Oh
and
yeah.
focus to do it. And at the time, that's how I was being taught. And that's
Hmm.
what was, I already told you. So that's what was being presented to me, that this is an important thing you're doing. And
Yes.
then I got connected to this music and I was like, wow. So here's this like hard rock music that's a little rebellious in terms of the fact, like, my parents didn't like it. And my
Right.
older brother loved it.
Yeah.
And that was another thing, is like, he passed it on to me.
Hmm.
Um, but I think like for me, like I wasn't like a long hair wild drummer. I looked exactly the same. So I was like, but Neil was that. He was like,
He was very
this.
intellectual
He
and like
was this short-haired
poetic.
guy that read books and was
Yeah.
not, did not. He who so like it was you in a Neil
There's a
Peart
lot to admire.
and you're into John Bonham too, who I also love,
Oh my God.
but John Bonham was this larger than life rock star,
Yes.
manly personality, that
But
was in.
still very like kind of cerebral. Like right? The
Absolutely.
way he played.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, but a lot of people just were like, thought of him as this wild character. And it's like, well, no, you don't
Yeah.
get that good without the
The other
seriousness of
side.
it. But Neil, like, definitely, like, you know, if, if you were, for lack of a better word, if you're kind of dorky, Neil was like your hero because he was this rock star. He was one of
Yeah.
the world's most famous drummers. And he was a shy person,
He wrote all the
not
lyrics for
not that I was a
Rush.
shy person, but like I don't know, he just kind of gave
Right.
hope to, or gave you the kind of a stepping stone. And actually, so he was like my first drum hero and a lot of people's. And then I everything I jumped to after that kind of made sense. Then I got really into David Garibaldi, who's like a lifelong
Mm.
hero, and his approach to funk and soul music, which led me down that. And then obviously once you get
Yeah.
into jazz, jazz has got a highly intellectual side or a highly
Oh
skilled,
yeah.
like
Like
so
Tony Williams, I remember you
absolutely.
said,
Tony,
yeah.
love Tony
Elvin
Williams and Elvin
Jones.
Jones,
I
and
saw Elvin
absolutely
Jones. Pete and I saw Elvin Jones in the '90s. I think was it the night? Yeah, like the early '90s at the Regatta Bar. He was awesome.
he was awesome. And the funny thing is though, I find a lot of drummers that are great. It's like a lot of great jazz drummers or guys that don't play in a band, don't sound like they're not in a Rush tribute band, but like you find
Yeah.
these guys and they're totally like Rush fanatics,
Oh really?
like yeah, and it's always like kind of refreshing, but like
Yeah.
not unlike what I found with Bob. I think the thing is you see what Neil did, and then you're like, okay, well, I don't want to do that. I just
Right.
want that
And
spirit, and
appreciate it.
and do something different. But like, I
That's
think it's
true, the spirit of it. And also, I know you were a Taylor Hawkins fan and saw him play with Alanis, right?
I did. I
Back in
mean,
the
I
day.
wasn't a is a human. I appreciated Taylor Hawkins. I mean,
Yes.
I think more like I always kind of appreciated his energy, and I thought he was like a great modern
Exactly. That's
rock
what made me
drummer.
think of him, like the energy and the spirit behind the person.
Well,
Like you were
and
saying
what was
earlier,
great
it's the
is
people
is a
too.
teacher now that we're kind of, we're a couple generations above students. He was someone I would point a lot of students to.
Mm.
When students are learning how to play rock music or learning how to play the drums, because a lot of popular music, a lot of it it's hard for them. Like
Right, it's all drum
when
machines
we
and
were
stuff.
growing
Yeah.
up, it was not hard to hear
That's
a
right.
great
The
drummer.
separation of all the instruments, right? You
It
could
was
hear
it was
everything.
very, very easy because it was
Yeah.
either, all of top 40 radio was actually live drums, and there was still like quintessential drum heroes everywhere, either on MTV or on the radio or albums or what people were talking about. I mean, so like, the Police were, when I was a kid, like this wildly popular band. I was talking about it with the student tonight. Like I said, I was having them play to Every Breath You Take, so they could really
That's a
learn
great
how
tune.
to lock in. Yeah, really learn lock in with a very solid rock beat. And they were kind of like, yeah, this song's interesting. I know this song. It's an old song. I was like, yeah, it's an old song. I said, when I was a kid, and I said, and so we started talking about Stewart Copeland, and I said, and then I was wrapping up the lesson, and the father was very into it, and he said, yeah, so should we listen to any other Stewart Copeland? I said, you should listen to absolutely everything Stewart Copeland's ever recorded because
Oh,
it's
what a
brilliant,
voice.
and there's some of the best sounding drums, right? And I said, well, the other thing was like Every Breath You Take. It was everywhere. It was like a wildly popular song in the '80s, and
Very. Oh, yeah.
so I mean, I think now it's not as easy for people to hear. I mean, I have children too, so it's they're into
To find
lot of
kind of a
different music.
modern day,
So I
yeah.
thought Taylor and the Foo Fighters, were always a great example of like, when a student is trying to find rock that's out there. I would say that I said there's someone you should check out. There's a
That's a good point. I see what you're
yeah,
saying
and I
there.
mean, I did. I saw him one of my first dates with Stacy. We saw him play with the Lannis before he was in the Foo
I
Fighters.
loved that Alanis album. That was a big album for the 90s, but
Yeah,
she was really, paving some new ground then, her style and her songwriting,
absolutely.
right? Like she
And
had a really
Flea
cool
was on that
vibe.
album. I mean,
Yeah,
for
exactly.
I mean, that was like our music too. We were all in college around that
Yeah,
time,
exactly.
so
It's like this stuff's cool.
yeah,
So Dave, one other thing I wanted to bring up is I wanted to have some fun. Something new I'm introducing to the Earthtones show is bringing a little fun to the show by talking a little astrology.
sure.
So astrology has been something I've like loved since high school, and I am by no means an astrologer. But since COVID, I rekindled my interest and I started taking an online course, and I actually had a mentor, and it was very cool. So I asked Dave, I said, "Hey, do you mind if I pull your chart?" And he's like, "Sure, why not?" So
Right.
Dave's birthday, here, let me do this. I'm going to share screen.
And this is great because
Let me see if I
you're
can do
you know
this.
a lot about astrology, and other
Real.
than what sign I am, I really don't know a lot.
This
So
is going to be fun. I'm
this is gonna
so
be good.
excited.
This is
I'm
good.
so excited that you
This is
know
me
your own
getting
genius.
educated,
I'm
everybody. So
really
this is gonna be a
excited.
good time.
So Dave's birthday is August 15th. He's a Leo. You share a birthday with Oscar Peterson, by the
Oh,
way. So
awesome.
that's very, very cool.
Because
And
the only one
yeah.
I've known before that was Ben Affleck.
Oh, really?
So this is oh,
Yes.
me and OP. Awesome. I love Oscar Peterson.
Oh, yeah. I know. I know.
So,
You're in good company. And
oh,
I'm going
absolutely.
to send you this it's from
Okay, this is awesome.
astrodias.com. In fact, this is from a very ancient website that was originated in Sweden. In fact, the tutorials on this site are this elderly man. They're really interesting. This is a really old site. I don't even know half of what it does, but I've got your chart here, and
Okay.
it makes complete sense that you're a Leo. For one, it's a fire sign. So Leos have this natural just energy about them. We're human beings, of course, we're multi dimensional in terms of our energy. But in general, you've got this a lot of fire in the Leo sign. They're people who have a strong sense of self. They're very passionate. They're very charismatic people, which definitely falls in line with you being a drummer. And but also Leos are people who inspire others to want to their greatness too. You know, like sometimes Leos will get a bad rap, like, oh, you know, center of
Yeah.
attention. Oh, they're so dramatic. But they're also they want that for everybody though. This is my take on it. So I could definitely see you also as a teacher. Like your Leo personality. And this is so wild. So now you're going to learn you knew you were a Leo, but this is what you're going to learn that's new. Firstly, your moon sign is if you see right here,
Yeah. The Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. So you are also a fire moon. So your moon, where the moon was in the sky, the kind of the portion of sky, is supposed to be a lot of your emotional self. So your sun sign is like your kind of your basic personality. It always shines like the sun. And the moon sign is supposed to be kind of like your emotional self. So you've got fire in your moon sign as well. I'm pretty familiar with the Sagittarius sign because Dorian, my youngest, he has 5 planets in Sagittarius. So Sagittariuses are like the philosopher. So that kind of intellectual side of yourself may come. We take a lot on from our moon sign. So you're a Sagittarius moon, and it's in your second house. So your chart here is divided into houses, and your second house has your moon in it, which is the house of values and desires. And your sun, now check this out. Your sun, which is in Leo, falls in your 10th house of career legacy, which makes complete sense because that fire in your career. And this 10th, this is one other thing I know, the line that separates the 10th house, which goes right across the middle of your chart, is called the midheaven. It's supposed to split the sky right in half, is in Leo as well. So your career calling, your midheaven line is Leo, your sun sign is Leo in the house of career legacy, and you have your moon in the second house of desires and values. That's a lot of fire. Very, very cool.
So this is all making sense. I'm definitely
Does this resonate with you?
it. I know it does. It does.
It's
This
pretty
is
wild.
very cool.
It's very
No one
isn't
can
it
see me, but
wild?
I'm studying this chart very intently while
Yes,
you're recording to it.
exactly. It's really wild because you look at it, it's like all these signs. It's like, what does this all mean? And so basically, you have what's called your big 3. So the biggest, here's all the planets, which would take us a long time, but your sun, your moon, and your rising sign. Like for me, my sun is a Capricorn, my moon is Virgo, um, and my rising sign is Cancer. So for you, your rising sign is in Scorpio. This is your first house. So you have Scorpio ascendant. So this AC here stands for ascendant or rising sign. And Scorpios are very skilled at kind of understanding like the more rich and deeper parts of life. They kind of like the esoteric. They are good at, they're very loyal friends. They're good at getting things done. So the ascendant is what our soul calling, what we're aspiring to become. So there's a little taste of
I like
some
it.
astrology
This
for
is
you. Let
very
me
good.
stop
Thank you.
share. You're so
I
welcome. I'm going to send
mostly
you
I'm
this.
this is not a bad report. Like you weren't like you're in trouble here. You
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, you know what? Every sign has an evolved. See, that's the Sagittarius moon, like the philosopher. Um, every sign has an evolved and an unevolved version. So what we want to do is we want to try to always get to the, to the higher calling for each of our signs. So
Well,
Dave, let's also talk about some projects that you are working with now. So you mentioned the gravel project. Very cool stuff. Tell me what's coming up, or what are you guys up to now? The gravel project.
yeah, we so the Gravel Project is band I play in, or it's a full on. We're a band. We're all in it together. We've actually been playing together. You know Andrew, and you
While,
know
sure.
Jordan, and you know everybody.
Yep.
And we started out. I've been working with Andrew for about 10 years. And we
Wow.
started out just doing gigs as pros, all just kind of doing them. And he had this band. And then his brother moved up. His brother was living in Charleston, South Carolina.
Mm.
Jordan moved up, started playing B3
Keyboard.
with the
Yeah.
keyboard, right?
Yeah.
B3 and Rhodes, and he's a fantastic jazz pianist
Yeah.
as well. And we and Brandon Mays played. So at one point, the lineup was us, and with Brandon Mays, who's also an amazing drummer, who plays percussion and sings in the band. So we kind of were like, yeah, we just this kind of lineup settled, and we all kind of committed to it. And then what happened is, I just made some changes with some of the gigs I was doing professionally over the past few years. And Andrew and I had always been talking, and he was like, I really kind of want to, you know, devote more attention to this group. And he's like, so we kind of agreed on that. And then the really kind of cool thing is we all agreed on it before the pandemic.
Mm.
So, we kind of all went all in, and we're like, basically we were all subbing out a lot. And, Andrew was like, hey, it's great when the four of us are here, but it's so rare because everybody's working so much, and the music's not where it could be because we're always dealing with subs and we're always learning on the fly. I mean, and don't get me wrong, it was always good. It was always a good sound, but it wasn't where it could be. So,
Yeah.
in a very good way, things kind of, I
You
had
just
some
started
gigs.
putting out albums
Well,
and
and
yeah.
just even time wise, I had things open up that I could say, you know what, I'm going to devote more time to this. And so we kind of did the opposite. Like most things start as a band.
Mhm.
You get together with people that you like and you connect with, and you have a goal musically, and you write songs or you jam, and you
Yeah.
get excited, and you develop a sound and some songs and some, you know,
Sure.
and then you go out and you start gigging, and you start playing, and you start creating, a following, or, you get out there and where you live in the scene. But
You
what was
build
cool,
it.
you build
Yeah.
it, right, exactly. So what was cool was we had already kind of done that because we were professionals, and we've been playing for so long. We've all been playing with a lot of different people, and so then it kind of like we went backwards. Then we're like, oh, we're going to make this a band in a true sense of the word. We're going to write together. We're going to, you know, create the sound we want to actually sound like. And then so the pandemic happened, and then there were no gigs anymore.
Yeah.
So it dried up, and then so we had already started this process of writing material for what would be a new album. And so the cool thing was we agreed that we had no, we all remember there was no real promise of anything for a little while. We're
It's
like,
true.
what is going to come back and what's going to look like? So we were like, well, we should keep going with this. And we rented a rehearsal space so we'd all get together with masks on.
Hmm.
They rented a rehearsal space, and we would get together and write, and we were writing this material, and we were looking at the set lists we had, looking at the material we had already done, and really kind of uh, exchanging ideas a lot because everybody was home, exchanging ideas of
Yeah.
what we wanted to sound like.
What
I
helps you stay creative? Is it the getting together and inspiring each other, or is
Yeah,
it?
well, I think it's the playing, but then what was cool about the pandemic is I know for me personally, I had a lot of time to practice and delve into, it was like the first time since I was like 22, I went that long without playing a gig or having to prep for a gig.
Right.
So I really just started practicing and getting into how I like, kind of felt good in some ways that you could get in there and play the stuff you wanted to play
Yeah.
and bring that, like, because remember when you were younger, you would come into a band, and you were like, this is how I want to play.
Hmm.
But when you've been playing professionally for 20 years, you're like, yeah, you wouldn't think of it because you're like, there's, someone's going to tell you to not play that, or or
Right.
it's going to be too loud, or it's going to be too busy, or it's
That's
so
right.
there was none of that. It was just all creative. So what we did is we came up with a lot of stuff that was like part based,
Hmm.
So Andrew would spin an idea off of me, and instead of just saying, "Oh, I'll groove to it or play a groove to it," I said, "Okay, well, here's what the groove is," but I would actually, kind of create the part. And everybody did that. So
Right.
we came up with material we were really happy with. So we ended up, we kind of demoed it ourselves in the rehearsal space, and then we went to Q Division and did a couple sessions.
Oh, it's a nice
And
studio.
yeah, so we were able to actually make this album, and then we came out of the pandemic with the album that we actually finally released this
What's
February. So we
what's that album called?
it's called Many Miles Ahead, and we just released it in February. It's available. Physically, it's available on vinyl, which we're really pumped about. 8 songs is on vinyl.
Sweet.
And then we have a CD, which has got three extra bonus tracks, so it's 11 songs. And then you can
Nice.
stream this on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Music. So the Gravel Project, Many Miles Ahead, you can find that album. And
Super cool. I'm gonna leave all that info below in the show notes too.
great. And so we've been gigging pretty hard, right? When the pandemic ended, we were ready to go. And then, so we have a couple shows coming up this month, the 22nd in Framingham here in Mass we're going to be on a bill with Ghosts of Jupiter, which are great friends of the band and one of our favorite bands. They're super cool, super
Super
creative
cool.
band.
Where are you guys playing in Framingham?
Fireseed Arts, which
Oh
is
yeah.
you can look that up. Patino Vasquez from Los Sugar Kings, and that's kind of he curates that, and it's also a very,
Great space.
very cool
Such a cool
place.
space with like original
Yes,
artwork everywhere.
absolutely, yes. And
Oh,
then
people have to check it out.
yeah, and that's Friday the 22nd, and then the same bill goes up to the Stone Church in Newmarket, New Hampshire, the next night. So it goes to
The
Jupiter, and we're
23rd.
yeah,
Mm,
we're
yeah.
opening. And then that show again is going to be in Providence, Rhode Island on May 14th at Askew. So there's three shows we're kind of pumped about. And then we're going to be the Gravel Project. We do a weekly gig at Revolution Hall in Lexington, 1 to 4 every Sunday. And then we got a couple shows this summer that we're excited about. We're gonna be opening for the Spin Doctors. Do you remember them?
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yes, June 17th.
Where's that gonna be?
That's going to be in Manchester, New Hampshire at Anheuser-Busch Arena
Ah.
or brewery. But this is
Ah.
so we're kind of pumped. Speaking of 90s and music, we were into in college with Alanis Morissette. The Spin Doctors
Yes.
were a big
Oh
part
my
of that.
God.
So
Dun, 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 dun.
yeah,
Go ahead
exactly,
now.
exactly. And then
Oh, that's gonna be good.
this summer, we're doing a record release show that got canceled this February up at Theater in the Woods in New Hampshire, July 15th. We're also playing at Bank of New Hampshire Pavilion on the side stage on July 2nd, Saturday. That's the Tedeschi Trucks Band show. So we're playing the before and
Wow,
after
very
on the
cool.
side. Yes, we're excited about that. We've done that the last 2 summers. Actually, no, the last summer and then
Hmm.
2019, because 2020 it didn't
Before
happen.
COVID. Oh yeah, right.
Right. So
Right.
that's an amazing opportunity, and we always have a blast there. So that's what's coming up. And
Super cool. Good
yeah,
stuff, man. I gotta come check out a show.
yeah, please, you'd love it. And then the other project I have going on is AS3, which is with Andrew Stern
On
um,
guitar.
on
Yes.
guitar. Yeah,
Great guitar player.
great,
Yeah.
versatile, creative, and Brad Barrett on bass. And we kind of fell into a similar thing a few years back where we were kind of doing jazz gigs, like the Beehive that Andrew was booking, and he kind of instantly
Mm.
we hit it off, and he was like, we need to make a record, and we did. That was in 2017, a record called Bright Angel that's on Bandcamp,
Oh.
and then we've been doing kind of a every other month thing at the Lily Pad, or the Midway. We try and play once a month
Hmm.
on usually a very creative bill. We've done it with clear audience and fully celebrated orchestra. And
Nice.
Jim Hobbs and
Oh
I, when I
yeah.
saw him, talked about
Oh.
Sudbury, the music school.
Nice. Oh,
So,
great sax
because he saw
player.
me, he's like, "I know
He's
you," and
awesome.
I'm like, "I know you too." And we were like, "Sudbury," And,
Oh, that's good. He's got a great sound, like so
oh, he's
unique, such a
amazing.
great
Yeah.
voice.
So, and then we released a record called 2020 in 2020. So
Oh,
that's on Bandcamp. So you can find AS3 Bandcamp. So
2020.
yeah,
Okay. AS3 on Bandcamp.
yeah.
All right. Well, Dave, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me
on the show.
I
It has
I
been
had a
so
blast.
great to talk with you.
Absolutely, it was so much fun, and I learned so much. So
Yeah, man. Hey, if you ever want to follow up reading, let me know. There's a lot in your chart that's really interesting. I had a blast pulling it up today. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into Earthtones. See you next time. Bye-bye.